Yoshihiro Togashi is one of the greatest mangaka that has ever lived, and his work still stands the test of time. Yu Yu Hakusho is well over 30 years old at this point, but it still has some of the most memorable characters and villains, and my favorite being the younger brother Toguro. Now, this villain is one of my all-time favorite villains in all of Shonen, and Togashi brilliantly writes this character as someone who seems very superficial and shallow on the surface, but beneath that exterior lies a rich, multi-layered psyche shaped by contradiction, conviction, and an unspoken conflict. And Toguro's true intentions, once revealed, were some of the most shocking and emotionally impactful I've encountered in any story so far. Toguro's story takes place 50 years before the events of the original Yu Yu Hakusho. Back then, Toguro was a normal human who studied and trained martial arts with Genkai, who at the time was his lover, and together they had a dojo full of students. Together, Genkai and Toguro reached the pinnacle of their martial arts and pushed their bodies to their physical limits, and that frightened Toguro. Toguro was scared of losing all he accomplished to the passing of time, but Genkai was at peace with the passing of time. But then, all of a sudden, a demon named Chiron came and killed all of Toguro's 50 students. The demon Chiron invited both Toguro and Genkai to participate in the Dark Tournament in order to get their revenge. The Dark Tournament is a brutal martial arts tournament held in the demon world, organized by wealthy human elites and demon patrons who gamble on the outcome for entertainment. Think Squid Games, but in the demon world. In order to prepare for this tournament, Toguro went missing for 3 months, and when he reappeared, he was unrecognizable to Genkai. And in the Dark Tournament, Toguro is successful in killing Chiron. But his feelings of grief and regret don't subside from getting his revenge. As reward for winning the Dark Tournament, Toguro asks to be turned into essentially an immortal demon who doesn't age, so he never has to deal with loss or grief ever again. And Genkai regarded Toguro's decision to forsake his humanity and embrace demonic immortality as a profound betrayal, not only of the human condition, but of the intrinsic beauty found in aging, vulnerability, and mortality. To her, his choice represented a rejection of the very essence of what it means to live meaningfully. The dignity of growing old, the wisdom gained through hardship, the inevitable yet noble decline that defines the human experience. And as a result, Genkai's wish was to never participate in the Dark Tournament again and to sever ties with Toguro once and for all. And in the years that followed, Toguro led a meaningless life full of fighting and brutality. And on the surface, Toguro's backstory seems riddled with cliches and simplicity, but in actuality, Togashi crafted a backstory that transcends the typical shonen antagonist framework through themes of loss, fear, and the rejection of mortality. And Toguro's narrative becomes a reflection on the cost of power and the tragedy of severed humanity. Now, I won't get into specifics just yet, but later in the video, I'll break down exactly how Togashi weaves these themes into Toguro's character with remarkable depth. The next time we see Toguro is during the Yukina Rescue Arc, where Yusuke and the gang are breaking into Tarukane's mansion to save Yukina. Tarukane is a wealthy businessman who has captured an ice apparition known as Yukina. Yukina is very valuable because when she cries, she produces a gemstone that is worth a lot of money. And Tarukane hired the Toguro brothers to extract the Hiroseki stones from Yukina. But Toguro still holds a high moral compass and even tells Yukina that you should probably learn to cry without me inflicting pain so you suffer less. Even though Toguro gave up his humanity 50 years ago, he still can't get rid of it completely. He still holds on to the kindness and mercy that he used to have when he was a human, even though he gave it up to become a demon. Toguro exists as a paradox, constantly teetering the line between human and demon, and Toguro wouldn't kill if he didn't have to, but he doesn't mind killing those that deserve it, like Tarukane. It turns out that Toguro was actually working for Sakyo and was just undercover to take Tarukane's fortune. And to make this plan work, Toguro threw the fight against Yusuke, as Sakyo betted his fortune against Tarukane that Toguro would lose. And since he did lose, Sakyo took all of Tarukane's money. But Toguro's interaction with Yusuke reminded him so much of his past self that he started to take an interest in Yusuke and wanted to fight him again at full power. And after Toguro faked his death, he found Yusuke again in the human world and forced him to compete in the Dark Tournament, or he would kill everybody that Yusuke ever loved. So of course, Yusuke trains under Genkai and enters the tournament to face Toguro in the finals. But before Toguro fights Yusuke, he has to fight Genkai. And this fight is so much more than a physical brawl. It's more of a philosophical conflict. Genkai represents everything that Toguro gave up, and she is living proof that you can grow old, stay human, and still be strong. And that is the antithesis of everything that Toguro believes in. And by confronting her, he gets to see if the choice he made to become a demon was right or wrong. And in the fight, Toguro kills Genkai. But it's not just Genkai who died in this fight. It is also Toguro, at least the human version of him, that died alongside with Genkai. But with this, the stage was set for his final fight with Yusuke Urameshi. Yusuke now has all the motivation in the world to fight Toguro at 100% and maybe give him the challenge he's been looking for his whole life. The issue with becoming an immortal demon is that you become peerless. Toguro has been longing for a challenge, but since becoming a demon, he hasn't found anyone that can match him at his level, besides Yusuke Urameshi. And he's finally hoping that by pushing Yusuke hard enough, he will get the fight that he's always been looking for. And when Toguro and Yusuke face off in the finals, Yusuke doesn't disappoint. With the anger of Genkai's death motivating Yusuke, it takes him to new heights, actually challenging Toguro for the first time in his life. And Toguro is beyond excited by this challenge and is finally able to unleash 100% of his power. But unfortunately for him, this power is too much for Yusuke and completely overwhelms him. But he knows that Yusuke has a lot more power that he isn't tapping into, and he just needs a little motivation. So he turns his attention to Kuwabara. If he kills Kuwabara in front of Yusuke, the anger will trigger Yusuke's latent potential to come out, and it does just that. After Kuwabara's death, Yusuke can access the power he wasn't able to before, and now he's a match for Toguro at his 100%. And in their final clash, Yusuke is the one that comes out on top, and Toguro is finally defeated. And this is my favorite part about Toguro's character, and how Togashi completely shocked me with how he wrote him. Toguro was in control of everything since he met Yusuke. We thought that Yusuke was out to defeat a great evil in Toguro and save the day, but it turns out that everything was perfectly orchestrated by Toguro himself. Toguro wanted to be defeated, and he wanted to be defeated by someone like Yusuke, someone that reminded him of his old self. Now, when Toguro asked to become a demon, he was consumed by rage, guilt, and suffering, and he wasn't really in the right headspace to make that decision. But it was only after he became a demon that he started to reflect on his decisions. Did I make the right choice? Was I wrong in choosing strength over everything else? And was Genkai right about me in the fact that I ran away? All of these thoughts have plagued Toguro for the past 50 years, and in his heart he knows that he is wrong, but he hasn't found an opponent that could beat him and prove him wrong once and for all. So when Yusuke showed up out of nowhere, Toguro saw the potential in Yusuke to be the one to beat him and put him to rest. And Toguro put Yusuke through almost the exact same situation he went through. He threatened Yusuke's loved ones and even killed someone that meant the world to him. The only difference was Toguro didn't kill Kuwabara because he saw that he could achieve his goal without it. All he wanted was to push Yusuke past his limits and not take a life unnecessarily. It was a rare moment where his lingering humanity showed through. Toguro wanted to see that if someone experienced the same exact circumstances that he did, would they choose the same path that he walked or a different one? And what I find interesting about Toguro is that he wanted to be wrong. The reason why there are villains is because they think that their worldview is correct and that everyone that opposes them is in the wrong. It's really refreshing because Toguro is one of the few villains that doesn't really believe in the choices that they made, but he also isn't sure if he is wrong. And for 50 years, Toguro endured the psychological torment of his decision, perpetually haunted by the question of whether he had chosen correctly. In essence, he existed within a self-imposed purgatory, a hell of his own making, shaped by doubt, regret, and the pursuit of strength at the cost of his own humanity. And Yusuke was his final test to set him free. If Yusuke beat Toguro, he would be able to die and end the purgatory he created for himself on Earth. But if he beat Yusuke, then that would mean he was right all along, and he would have to live with that forever. But when Yusuke beat Toguro, Toguro actually thanked Yusuke, and that this is the first time in his life he was able to go 100% of his power, and Yusuke was able to answer. He also said that this was the only way that this could end. If Toguro lost to Yusuke without using 100% of his power, he wouldn't be satisfied, and it wouldn't answer the question, was it worth trading my humanity for the power of a demon? Because he needed to be beat at 100% of his power by a regular human. That was the only way for him to fully know if his decision was right or wrong. And when he was defeated, he actually smiled. And this was very different from the other times in the series where we saw him smile. Before, Toguro only smiled in the face of battle. when the thrill of a worthy opponent stirred something deep within him. Violence was the only thing that made him feel alive, and every grin and every smirk was anticipation for the fight ahead. But this smile at the very end looked like a sigh of relief, like a weight has been lifted off of his shoulders after 50 long years. But Toguro's suffering wasn't done just yet. After he died, he met with Koenma in the spirit world to decide his fate. And before Koenma could even sentence him, Toguro asked to be sent to Limbo. And Limbo is essentially hell, where you continuously get tortured for years and years and years, where suffering knows no end. And Koenma is pleading with Toguro to reconsider and to not do this, and that he hasn't done enough bad to deserve a life in hell. Koenma even says that you have enough time to reconsider, but Toguro responds with, "I have had far too much time." So Koenma reluctantly sends him to hell, and Koenma's final thoughts on Toguro paint him out perfectly. Koenma says that Toguro is a complex case. He's like an anthill. The deeper you dig, the more tunnels appear, and inside each is a creature ready to bite. Layer upon layer of bravado, facades, contradicting desires, and intensely wrought obsessions. But beneath it all, I suspect you would find just a normal man with a wounded heart and a broken dream. And before Toguro can reach hell, he meets Genkai one last time. And they have a conversation on the path that Toguro took. Genkai says that she knew how everything would end, including Toguro's life, but she was unable to stop it. She even calls out Toguro's ridiculous guilt and how he isn't tired of blaming himself and Genkai for what happened to his students. And Toguro tells some lies that he actually was happy that Kairen killed his students and that he was able to reach this potential, but Genkai saw through it. Even so, Toguro still reaffirms the belief that he wanted it to end this way and that he deserved to suffer. And as he's leaving, he asks Genkai to look after Yusuke. He says that Yusuke can still get stronger, but don't let him go astray like I did. Genkai then says that Yusuke is the closest thing to a son she ever had. And she even says, "Toguro, in your own twisted way, you feel the same." And that's his last interaction before he goes to hell. What I find so interesting about Toguro is the amount of self-loathing and hatred he has for himself. He cannot forgive himself for any of the actions he has committed and thus wants to condemn himself for eternity. He's a man who made a choice to sacrifice his humanity for power. And for 50 years, no one held that decision against him more than he did. Genkai forgave him, Yusuke didn't hate him, even Koenma in the end showed him compassion. But Toguro never let himself off the hook. He believed that choosing strength meant choosing solitude, that to be invincible, he had to cut himself off from everything that made him human. Connection, love, and regret. But those things never really left him. They just lingered beneath the surface, festering, and when he looked at Yusuke, he saw the life he threw away. That's why he asked to go to hell. Not because he was a villain, but because he couldn't accept redemption. Because in his eyes, living with what he'd done and what he had become was already hell. Toguro is a tragedy, not because he died, but because he chose to stop living long before his final fight. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you love Yu Yu Hakusho and Toguro, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!